Okay, hello to my colleagues in Union. My name is Ryan Hornbeck. I'm going to reshoot one of these videos in case you need a spare due to the low quality of the originals. I'll present it to you as I normally would present it to students, although I think it's inevitable that I will speak more quickly tonight at 1:20 a.m. to my colleagues in the States than I would normally to students here in Wenzhou. And finally, you'll notice that the PowerPoints, they have a lot of text, more text than is generally considered ideal. Our PowerPoints in this class, they also double as a major reading material for the course. Students know they are supposed to focus on my voice and ignore the small text during the lecture unless I point to it. Okay, this is Introduction to Cultural Anthropology, Class 10. We got Religion and Rituals, Part 1. Okay, so everybody, we've already touched on this idea of symbolism. Way back in class 4, we said humans are unique because they have symbolic thought, this ability to use symbols like words, images, objects, or actions to represent objects or concepts that are not immediately present in the physical world. And we said that symbolic thought, it gives us this incredible ability to communicate with each other. You know, humans are a social species. We are a communicative species. We communicate with each other. And symbolic thought is what allows us to share ideas, create art, gossip, and plan for the future. And we talked about this. The most powerful example of symbolic thought is language, right? We use language to conduct so much of our communication. Language can do so much, but language can't solve all of our communication needs, right? What if I say, you can trust me, or I love you, or hey, I'm a different person now. I mean, language might not be as effective here because it's easy to lie with language, right? Just because I say you can trust me, it doesn't mean you can trust me. But that's okay because language is just one of our cultural tools for communicating with each other. We have many others. And today we'll look at rituals. Now, there are countless definitions of ritual in anthropology. For today's purposes, we can simply say that rituals involve unique actions, often highly stylized, formal, repetitive actions. And these unique actions are what allow one thing to symbolize another thing during a ritual performance. So let's explore some examples of how rituals achieve this. We're going to look at some examples of what rituals do in societies. Let's see, we'll talk about they signal that an important change has occurred. We can use rituals to transform our identity, to foster trust, and in some cases for healing, right? For healing and therapy. And we're going to connect each one of these functions to these unique features of ritual actions. So, like we just said, ritual actions, they're not like normal actions, right? They're often very formal and stylized. They often require periods of isolation in which someone leaves society for a short period of time. They're often very costly, very expensive for the people who participate in them. And they often draw on altered states of consciousness. I mean, in rituals, we experience the world differently than we do in our everyday life. So we're going to look at how these characteristics of virtual actions facilitate these ritual functions through symbolic communication. Actually, suddenly get paranoid that I'm not recording. Let me just check that. Whoop. Okay. Okay, so we'll talk about these functions of ritual, starting with, whoops, signaling important changes. So what can rituals do? Let's start very simple. Rituals can be used to unambiguously, and let me get my marker here, unambiguously and officially signal that an important change has occurred. For example, a boy becomes a man and woman become, husband and wife. The time for harvesting the crops this year is over. Or we are now at war with a neighboring group. I mean, these are significant changes because they have an impact on people's lives. They entail changes in responsibilities or privileges or how resources are distributed. When we move from here to here, life changes for people, right? Getting married. In many traditional societies, that has a very significant impact on what people can do and how they are treated by others. I mean, in many societies, you cannot live together or have children before marriage. You can live together. You can have children after marriage. So going from here to here, this is an important transition with significant consequences. And because of that, because there are consequences, it needs to be very clear, when this has happened. We need a signal that unambiguously and sort of, officially tells us that this is happening. So, yeah, going back to marriage, there can't be any confusion about whether we are married or not married. It needs to be very clear because our rights and privileges are very different if we're married versus if we are not married. Now, this is where the unique characteristics of rituals are useful. Ritual actions, we said, not like other actions, often very stylized, formal, rigid, invariant. And this is good for communicating that an important change has taken place, right? This is good for communicating something unambiguously and officially. I'm not going to go through that, okay? For example, in most societies, historically, maybe not today, but historically, you need a ritual to get married. You can't just say you're married. Do you want to get married? Yes, okay. Hey, everyone. Hey, we're married. We can't do that, right? I mean, verbal messages are not always reliable signals. Verbal messages can be easily misinterpreted. Maybe you misunderstood what I said. Maybe you thought I said, or maybe I thought you said carry you, right? Do you want me to carry you? And denial. It's easy to lie about what we said or did not say. It's easy to say, "Oh, I never said that." No, verbal messages don't leave much evidence behind, and it's always hard to prove to other people that someone said something. She said she'd marry me. She said she'd marry me. I mean, did she? There's probably not much evidence. Ritual signals are less subject to misinterpretation and falsification. Rituals are usually, I mean, impossible to misinterpret. These very stylized, very, very formal characteristics make it very clear, what is happening, that the ritual is happening and what the ritual is signaling. So if you know anything about Western culture, you know exactly what's going on right here, right? Uh, there's no chance for misinterpretation. This is a wedding, right? He's not giving her a hand massage. They are not on a date. They're getting married. They are absolutely getting married. There is no other way of interpreting what is happening here. And it's also hard for them to, yeah, it's also hard for them to deny their intentions. If you participate in the ritual, then it's clear that you consent to the outcomes. You agree to the outcomes. It's a lot of work to have a wedding. It's very expensive to have a wedding. So you would only have a wedding if you intended to have a wedding and if you agree to get married. No one accidentally has a wedding, and you don't have a wedding without intending to get married. So a wedding, it's a very reliable signal that an important change has taken place. Yeah, to understand the historical significance of rituals as reliable signals, a good comparison in modern societies would probably be the signature, right? The handwritten signature. I mean, today we have to sign contracts or agreements all the time, right? If you want to work for a company, you have to sign a contract. If you want to buy a gym membership, you have to sign a contract. Verbal commitments are not acceptable. They're easily misinterpreted and denied. If a conflict arises, it's difficult for the other party to prove that you said what you said. Signatures are less prone to misinterpretation and denial. And before we used signatures, we used rituals. So that's one way that rituals serve as symbolic communication. They clearly and officially signal that an important change has taken place. Okay, transforming identities. And I'm sorry I took the video off. I had to turn off the lights. It's quite late here, past 2 a.m., and they were really starting to hurt my eyes. Transforming identities. Sometimes a ritual, it doesn't just mark that a change, a transformation has taken place. Sometimes it also transforms individuals in a way that helps them to embody the norms and expectations of this new status, this new role that they're stepping into. We call these rituals rite of passage rituals. Rite of passage rituals do many things, but here's the most important one. They help us to internalize and embrace the behaviors, attitudes, and responsibilities that are associated with this new role we're stepping into. They help us to create a new identity that is consistent with those roles. And this in turn, it helps the community to accept us and support us in that new role. So, in simplest terms, rite of passage rituals, they typically enable two types of transformations, a moral transformation and a transformation to one's appearance. For example, many societies have a ritual that signals that a boy has become a man. And this is a big transition in many societies, right? In many societies, boys want to become men. Men have more benefits, privileges, they receive more respect. And so we have a ritual to signal this change. And a rite of passage ritual, it does a bit more than that. It doesn't just signal that this change has taken place, it actually helps to create that transformation. It creates a moral transformation. I mean, in many societies, a man belongs to a completely different moral category than a boy. A boy is immature, selfish, weak, while a man should be wise, generous, and strong. And rite of passage rituals can help to create this moral transition or sort of affirm or provide evidence that it has taken place. And then appearance. Yeah, there's a practical issue here, in that normally a person looks exactly the same after the ritual as they did before, right? And this can make it hard for community members to treat someone as a different kind of person if they look exactly the same as they did when they occupied a different category of person. So if you're a boy and you walk out that door and come back in 5 minutes and you're a man, but you look exactly like you did 5 minutes ago, it's hard for people to perceive you as something other than the boy that you were 5 minutes ago, given that you look exactly like that boy, right? Um, but a rite of passage ritual, it will often change a person's appearance somehow. Often it's physical, or they receive a new name, or they receive something to wear. That's sort of one way or the other helps them to helps community members to perceive them as a different sort of person now that they have undergone the ritual. Right. So rite of passage rituals, they give people a new identity. How do they do it? Well, they do this by creating something called a liminal state. I'm just going to read this definition here. Liminal state, a transitional phase where individuals undergo a temporary and possibly dangerous excursion beyond society's boundaries. This period of ambiguity and transformation allows them to shed old identities and prepare to assume new roles within the communities. So this means that during the ritual, you will go away from society for some time, maybe days or weeks. You'll isolate yourself And you'll just sort of start to get rid of your old identity and develop a new one. For example, the Lakota Sioux Vision Quest. Adolescent males should undertake a vision quest as they come of age in Lakota Sioux society. And during this quest, they will undergo hardships that test their strength and maturity. And we can look at this as an example. Yeah, the next slide has a lot of text. As always, listen to me now, and you can read through these details later. All right, so step one, before the vision quest. Well, in this step, we receive instructions from the village elders. They tell us what to do, what to expect, and often we do some purification procedures, right? Maybe fasting, bathing, participating in sweat lodge ceremonies. We're cleansing our body and mind and spirit and preparing ourselves to have a powerful spiritual experience, right? And then we have the separation phase. So we leave society. We go to some remote location, maybe a mountaintop or a cave or a forest far away. And we're leaving society behind, but symbolically, we're also leaving behind our previous status as a child. So once we find this place, we find a sort of isolated location, we settle in for our liminal phase. All right. So now we spend several days in this location alone, usually, fasting, praying. We start to experience our bodies, very differently than we normally do. We're not eating. We're probably not sleeping very well. We're not in our comfortable bed. We're not talking to other people and sort of filled with all those social anxieties and responsibilities. Our mind is sort of freed up from all of that. And this often leads to a sense of heightened spiritual sensitivity. And we're looking for this vision. We're looking for this revelation. And it often comes in the form of an animal or some sort of spirit guide, like an eagle, a bear, a fox. There will be some vision, which we will see something that is supposed to give us guidance and wisdom and insight into what our life purpose is supposed to be, what our goals are for the future. So we sit there and we fast and we pray until it happens. Finally, it happens, right? Finally, we have this vision. We spend a few more days sort of thinking about what it means. What does this mean? What type of person am I supposed to become? Finally, we re-enter society, right? We come back to society and we tell the village elders, maybe we tell the entire community what we have seen. And once we're back, the people, they can see this evidence of these two transformations, right? The moral transformation, the fact that we survived, the fact that we survived in the wilderness indicates that we have, a certain level of maturity and responsibility. And maybe the quality of the vision as well, right? We share this vision with everyone, and they will determine whether this is the vision of a mature person or not. If it's not, maybe we sort of have to go do this again in the future. And we usually look different after this, right? We we come back, we haven't eaten, we haven't slept. We look sort of, dirty and grizzled and starved and unkempt. We look different. And once we get back, we get a new name, right? Crazy Horse is a famous example in North America. We might receive an item that symbolizes our spirit animal. If our vision, we saw an eagle, maybe we receive an eagle feather, right? And we wear that in our hair or in our person somehow. And you can see how the boy really does take on an entirely new identity from this ritual, right? Now he's associated with an animal and a specific vision and a goal or purpose in life. He's transformed through this vision. And this makes it easier for other people to see him as a new type of person. I mean, in other people's eyes, he's not the same person. This isn't a little boy, right? This is Flying Bird or Big Bear or Crazy Horse. This is a completely different person. These can be very powerful. They can transform someone into a completely different person, right? You lose your name and possibly whatever life goals you had going into this quest. I mean, what's your name? Chen Jie, and you want to go to graduate school and become a math teacher? No. Now you are Flying Bird, and your life purpose is to publish children's books for bilingual children. I don't know. You can be completely transformed in the space of a week. And I've written out here an example of Crazy Horse, who I just mentioned, a famous Lakota war leader. But this is another way that rituals serve as symbolic communication. They symbolize to others that we have become a different sort of person, right? We have become a person who is ready to step into a new role in our community. Fostering trust. Ritual is very powerful, fostering trust among people within communities. Now, let's start with a basic fact about rituals. They're often very costly for the participants, right? They may cost, material resources, time and effort, pain and scarification. Um, Material resources. A famous example in Western countries or countries within the Christian cultural diaspora, the ancient Hebrews and the biblical Old Testament, they sacrificed many precious resources, seeking blessings from God. Right? They burn lots of food, valuable possessions, and they are living in a desert. I mean, they are not these items do not exist in abundance there. They need them. This isn't extra stuff people have lying around. These rituals are very expensive. Some rituals are costly in the effort they require participants. Famous example here, the Hajj pilgrimage requires all Muslims to journey to the city of Mecca at least once in their lifetime, often entails a journey of hundreds or thousands of kilometers. And this, practice, dates back to at least the 6th century. Uh, I mean, this is a massive effort for most Muslims, right? Most Muslims today, and even back into the 6th and 7th century, they don't live right outside the Mecca city gates. They're all over the world. I mean, it's a very long and arduous trip, even by today's standards, let alone a, a thousand years ago, right? This ritual requires a massive effort to complete. And this is an example we looked at a couple of weeks ago when we were looking at warfare in horticultural societies. We looked at this scarification ritual in Papua New Guinea among the Chambri people. They had this crocodile scarification ritual. It's a rite of passage where these young men receive these skin cuts to resemble, crocodile skin. Very painful, right? So remember, we touched on human evolution in weeks 1 and 2 of this course. Now, from an evolutionary perspective, we might wonder, I mean, what's going on here? How is it possible that these types of behaviors are so cross-culturally common? I mean, this is expensive. You're giving away all your food. You live in the desert. You're giving away all your food. And this is dangerous. People often, die from these crocodile scarification rituals. It seems like this type of thing should be a disadvantage in evolution, right? It seems like societies that do this stuff should fail, right? These rituals may seem absurd to us, but they do something that is very valuable in human societies. They prove to us that this person undertaking the ritual is very serious about what they are doing. They're very committed to God or to becoming a warrior. And we might see this as absurd. But remember, this man who went through this crocodile scarification ritual, he has proven something to us, even though we don't know him or his society. We are thousands of miles away in China, but he has proven something to us he has proven that he is committed to this idea of becoming a man. He is serious about this. I mean, this looks awfully painful, right? You wouldn't do this unless you took this matter very, very seriously. And if we did live in his society, then his participation in this ritual would probably inspire us to trust him at least a little. Or if we were Muslim, if we were living in a Muslim society and we had a family, friends, a family who traveled thousands of kilometers to go to Mecca, this might motivate us to trust them a little because they are signaling their commitment to something that has great value in our society or in their society. And it costs them a lot to do that, a lot of money or time or pain. And we think they wouldn't do that unless they really believe in this. Now, in evolutionary psychology, we have something called costly signaling theory, which states that individuals who can effectively signal their trustworthiness are more likely to form alliances, receive support, and succeed in social environments. And in our evolutionary past, as we discussed, uh, figuring out who is trustworthy and who is not trustworthy was very important. It was a matter of life or death. But even today, we can see this logic of costly signaling theory kind of everywhere in our daily lives, right? Um, so, ladies, if you're going out on a first date with a guy, it's good if he can take you someplace nice, right? Either it's someplace expensive or it's someplace that he put a lot of time into, but he needed to pay something, either money or time and effort. If he picks you up, takes you out, and it's clear that he's invested a lot into this, you would think, okay, this guy is serious about me. You may or may not like him, but you know that he is committed to the idea of being a significant person in your life because his actions were costly. They cost him time, effort, or money. And now there's a tiny bit of trust there, maybe. Now, if he picks you up and you say, "Oh, where are we going?" And he says, I don't know. I thought we just walk around. I mean, what do you want to do? Now you're wondering, I mean, is this guy serious about me? This didn't cost him anything. Maybe you like him, maybe you don't, but he's not really giving you any reason to trust him yet. We have a term for these costly displays. We call them creds, credibility enhancing displays, or hard to fake signals of commitment. I mean, they're difficult to imitate without genuine belief or dedication. If the man you're dating clearly put a lot of time and effort into planning your date, that's a cred. That's a credibility enhancing display. His credibility with you went up. Creds are an important part of religious socialization. And we have research that shows that in religious households, exposure to credibility enhancing displays, creds, significantly predicts whether a child will follow their parents' religion. Why are some people Christians? Why are some people Muslim? Well, usually we think, well, their parents were, right? Their parents were Christian. The evidence to date suggests that that's only a part of the story. Research shows, actually, this is a great study by one of my best friends, John Landman. Uh, Children who witness their religious parents doing these things over here on the left tend to adopt their parents' religion as they become adults. So what do we have here? Attendance at religious services or meetings, and engagement in religious volunteer charity work, making personal sacrifices for their religion. These things are expensive. Even just going to church every weekend, it's a lot of time and effort. That's the weekend when people want to stay in bed or go out and have fun. And you wouldn't do all these things unless you really believed in your religion. And this research shows that when children see their caregivers not only say they have certain beliefs, but also engage in costly practices that sort of align with those beliefs, this signals a deep level of commitment and credibility that makes the belief more appealing and convincing because it suggests to children that the beliefs are worth the costs associated with them. So again, the findings here are that um, if you grew up in a religious household and your parents did these things on a weekly basis, you're quite likely to have adopted that religion. And if you grew up in a religious household or you're in a household in which your parents claim to have religious beliefs, but they did not demonstrate any of these activities, you're much less likely to adopt your parents' religion. But let's bring this back to rituals, and let's look at an example of a ritual example of a credibility enhancing display. And let's look at this Maori ritual, the haka. This is a ritual dance that is used on many different types of occasions. Traditionally, it is a war ritual. You do this ritual before war, before fighting, to try to scare your enemies. But it's used in many different occasions. You can use it to welcome people. You can use it at weddings, at funerals. You can use this ritual anytime you want to show respect to someone, because when you do the ritual, you're saying, the side of you, it fills me up with spiritual energy. When I see you, I am filled with spiritual energy. Maybe I will use that energy to fight you, or maybe I will use it to love you and protect you. But you do that to me. You fill me up with spiritual energy. Now, you've possibly already seen this ritual. The famous New Zealand rugby team, the All Blacks, they do it before every match. You see them, shouting at each other. They're telling a story. The ritual has a story. And this is the story. You can read it later. I'll tell you the basic idea. There is a warrior. There's a warrior who is running from his enemies. There are too many enemies. He is certain that he is going to die. And throughout the ritual, you will hear the men shouting, "Kamat, kamat, kamat." It means, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Well, he runs to a nearby town and he sees a friend there. And the friend tells him to hide in this hole in the ground. And this friend helps him to hide from his enemies. So the enemies, they come into town, they look for him, they can't find him, and they leave. And so he starts to climb the ladder out of this hole. And he's just so grateful to be alive. And when he gets to the top and he steps into the sun, he feels so alive. He feels like he is overflowing with spiritual energy. And he says, "Kora, kora, kora, I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm alive." Now here, turn up the volume a bit. Here's an example. It's not from a rugby match. It's from a wedding. It's about 2 minutes long. The wedding guests are doing the haka as a sign of love and support for the new couple. And as you watch this, I want you to consider how difficult it would be to fake these emotions. Um, right. So a wedding, this is a time when family and friends come together to show their love and support for the new couple. I mean, in Western countries, friends and families will give a speech. When my younger brother got married, I stand up and give a speech in which I tell him and everyone, how much I love him. I would do anything for him. But it's hard to do that well because words are so easy to fake. I mean, just because I tell you I love you, it doesn't really mean I feel any love for you. And words are easy to steal. I could have stolen that speech from the internet. Now, normally we have to write the speech very, very carefully so that it will be clear to everyone that we put a lot of time and effort into writing it. And that time and effort is the evidence that we really love this person. But this haka dance, it's arguably a more convincing expression of love because it's very hard to fake. It's hard to do this. It's hard to make this face if you don't have strong emotions for the person, right? If you don't have deep feelings for these people. I mean, if you come to my wedding and you tell me you love me and you would do anything for me and you do this, I believe you. I believe you, right? I believe you because this is hard to fake. It's costly. It's expensive to do this. It not only costs a lot of energy, but it's embarrassing. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to do that. They know they look silly. I mean, they know they may have friends or coworkers there who are laughing at them. I mean, you can think of it like this. Imagine if we have a male student here who comes down and stands out there in the courtyard and shouts up and says, "Shawi, I love you." I mean, that's embarrassing for him. That was costly. He's not going to do that unless he feels really strongly about Shawi. I mean, this is a credibility enhancing display, right? If you come to my wedding, you do this, your credibility with me goes up because I assume that you would not endure these costs if you didn't truly love me. So, this is one way in which rituals can establish trust. Rituals make costly demands on the participant. They require the participant to do something that will cost a lot of money, effort, or pain. And by doing that, by enduring those pains, they signal their commitment. So we've been talking about using rituals to symbolically communicate with others. And sometimes we use rituals to communicate with ourselves, especially in healing rituals. Okay, healing rituals often foster an altered state of consciousness, like trance or out of body experience, psychedelic experiences, spirit possession. And societies often find functions for these altered states of consciousness, especially in medicine and other forms of healing, and especially in shamanistic rituals. Um, I mean, this is a big topic. We don't have that much time, so I'll just give you one example, a shamanistic example. There are a lot of similarities in shamanistic practices cross-culturally, and they all use something that we call ecstatic journeys. Okay. Ecstatic journey. This is a state of altered consciousness or trance in which the shaman transcends the ordinary reality and enters into some sort of sacred or spiritual world or some other world of existence. And often this is done for healing purposes. Uh, I mean, cross-culturally, it's very common that some types of illnesses are believed to be caused by temporarily losing one's soul. And in shamanistic traditions, we see a lot of soul recovery rituals in which the shaman will enter an ecstatic trance and undergo some journey to try to find the soul and bring it back to the person and their body. And shamans have many effective methods for doing this, for inducing trance, drumming, chanting, bells, rattles, and so on. And in contemporary Western cultures, we also have something called neo-shamanism. Now, neo-shamanism is a modern spiritual movement that adapts traditional shamanic practices and beliefs for contemporary use, usually focusing on, like personal growth, healing, connection with nature, that sort of thing. And especially healing. I mean, in America and England today, there are some people who do these shamanistic rituals for healing, for therapy. People who are suffering from depression or very low confidence or low self-esteem. And they do these rituals in which they try to retrieve their soul and bring it back into their body, get it to stay in their body. And often they're looking for a specific part of their soul, like their 7-year-old soul, their soul when they were 7 years old. Maybe something very terrible, very traumatic happened to them when they were 7, and it hurt them in a way that they have never fully recovered from. And in a culture with shamanistic traditions, they might believe that part of their soul ran away when that happened and never came back, and that's why they're still suffering. In a neo-shamanistic ritual, right, they might enter a trance and they take a spiritual journey in which they try to find their soul. They often send their soul out to sit under a tree and call for this part of their soul they are looking for. And according to practitioners, usually the soul appears and they try to talk to it. They ask it, "What's wrong? What can I do to bring you back?" If they think the soul is sad or scared about something, they try to make it feel better. Often they try to sing a song in which they express their love for this lost part of their soul. For many people, this works very well. And if you insist on judging it from a modern psychological angle, there is a reason why it works. Let me ask you, do you know anyone in your life who's really nice and really sweet, and they would do anything for you? They would do anything for their friends, but they treat themselves very poorly. They hate themselves. And I don't mean they're modest or humble. I mean they hate themselves. Unfortunately, we often see this with people who suffer from sexual abuse in childhood. They develop very negative self-perception and a very deep sense of shame, believing that they are, inherently flawed, unlovable, worthless. And such people are often very resistant to most forms of psychological therapy because deep down, they don't believe they are worthy of feeling better or being happy. And they can't fully engage in the therapy process that could help them feel better because they're always sort of sabotaging their own progress. So, why would shamanism work? Why would this soul retrieval ritual work where that fails? Well, remember, they can love other people. They can love you. They just can't love themselves. And this ritual, tricks or fools their mind into treating themselves as someone else. Excuse me. Okay, so in these rituals, I see myself as someone else. I can love someone else. I can look at someone else and say, "What's wrong? What do you need? You're beautiful, you're strong." And this often works by expressing love to themselves, represented as someone else. They feel that love. So the summary here is rituals often induce alternative states of consciousness, and these may have various social functions, including functions related to healing. As a form of symbolic as a form of symbolic communication, you're using this ritual in order to treat yourself as someone else, or you're using a symbol of yourself to communicate with yourself. So rituals are, of course, just one small example of culture as a symbolic practice, but it's a good example because it illustrates how versatile we are as communicators. And I also want you to notice that all the rituals we discussed here today, they communicate in a way that is just more effective than words for some purposes. It's more appropriate to use a ritual to signal that we're married than to just tell everyone we're married. It's more effective to use a rite of passage ritual to say we've entered a new social role than to just tell everyone we've entered a new social role. It's more effective to use a cred ritual, a credibility enhancing display, to convince you that I'm sincere than to just tell you that I'm sincere. And sometimes we need a ritual to speak with ourselves because we have such a negative impression of ourselves that we can only speak to ourselves as someone else. Oh, okay. Okay. It seems at the end of this lecture, then we transitioned into uh, what to expect on the first exam. So I'm sorry that was a bit garbled at points. I think this late in the evening, uh, my enunciation isn't as clear as it could be. But thank you for listening.